Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and with me is Chris Glimsdale, nominated this year at the Emmys for Outstanding Contemporary Hairstyling for The Last of Us. Congratulations, Chris. You're nominated for one of my favorite episodes this season for Long, Long Time, which kind of tells the love story between Bill and Frank. It's this epic love story in one episode. And I think audiences are not used to seeing Nick Offerman with this really long hair he has at the beginning. Um, where did that decision come from? How did you land on that look for him?
Yeah, that decision came from the fact that when he got to us, was very, very clean cut, very modern looking for the time period. And it just didn't fit in with sort of that armorist slash man of survival that he was, right? So
Right.
to me, that was someone that was a little bit more unkept, had longer hair. And so when we talked about it with Craig, we decided that he needed to look a little rougher and like he's kind of just chopped his own hair, doesn't really take care of himself very well, not very clean all the time. At the beginning, it's just not something he worried about. He was more worried about keeping himself safe. So that's kind of how we came up with it. So in that process, what we did was I ended up talking to Rob Pinkins, who is my wig maker at Wig Associates, Wigmaster Associates. Anyways, um, so we talked to him, and then we put the wig together, and we decided on the density and the hairline and the length and the texture and the color. So that's how we came up with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you go back to, was it important to look at the video game characters, or were you totally going in your own direction here?
We did a little bit of both just because the game is very detail oriented, right? So there's a lot of things that we wanted to keep sort of the same, but in that note too, we also wanted to create the characters true to who they thought they were. And so we did a little bit of combination of both. I never actually played the game, so I don't know that part of it, but I did look at the making the book that was made by Naughty Dogs, the creation of the video game. So we did look at that and sort of see the breakdown of how they got to each character. And that really helped define that spot where we need to go with the characters.
Yeah, I think, I played the game, so one of the nice surprises of this episode was Frank, because he that character is deceased in the game, so you have sort of a blank slate with that character. What was the decision like for Murray Bartlett's hair?
So Murray Bartlett came to us with just finishing up Black Lotus and stuff. So or just was just finishing up and kind of going back. So we couldn't change him very much. So we decided to we know that he needed to be rough because he's been on the run when we first see him in the pit. And so when we first see him, he's broken down, dirty, and has longer hair and hasn't really touched himself in a while. But he's not that character. He's the refined, more clean cut, really cares about what he looks like, cares about his surroundings, cares about who he's with. And it's a big part of him to take care of himself. So when we first see him, we see him broken down. He's got lots of hair, like his hair is really textured and dirty. And so what we did was we got rid of his natural gray, that was some of the natural gray that was there, created a darker look for him because he was younger when we first see him. And then we got rid of the gray with airbrushing the hair color in, and then added a whole bunch of hair pieces to fill in his receding hairline so he looks a lot younger, and then added some layers in the back, extensions in the back to add more layers and length to it. And then as his character ages, we cut his hair shorter, got rid of some of the depth of color, added a little bit more gray, and that's when we first see them sort of their argument on the street before they have dinner with Pedro and Anna, or Tess and Joel.
Yeah.
and and so they have dinner with them. And so in that look, he's got the longer layers on top, still filled in hairline, and then the shorter hair and some of the gray coming through. And then as we get a bit older, we kind of go from there, and we took out some more of the brown and added in a little bit more gray, and then slowly started receding his hairline and adding a whole bunch more gray and different textures and colors in there of grays, airbrushing it in and hand painting a lot of the hair color in. Um, and then that creates his older, sickly look. And so that's when we get that really nice really gray texture and depth to his hair, where he's clean cut, and that's who he really was sort of that clean cut character that we see from the argument on, really.
Yeah, I would imagine it's kind of a unique opportunity to get to evolve those characters that basically they live their entire lives, like 20 years together over the course of this episode, which I can't think of too many examples of TV where that gets to happen in such a truncated time. So, what kind of opportunities did that give you? Because they're in the apocalypse, they only have so many tools and skills at their own disposal to cut their hair, right?
Yeah, I mean, with Bill and Frank, it made it really kind of easy because they kind of had their own little village. So he had scissors there. They didn't have hair color or anything, so obviously they didn't change their hair color, but they did age gracefully through the years, and that was so much fun to sort of play with, especially Bill's wigs, and then add knotted hairs in to create the gray, blending it through the back. And then slowly seeing him change to a more refined person. And at the very end, with Bill especially, his hair got shorter. He was more clean cut. It was more of what Frank really wanted to see him like, and where Bill was comfortable at that point because he felt like he was so himself. Right before, he was kind of lost and didn't really care because he didn't have anyone to love. And so now that he found someone that he loved, he he was okay with changing and being who that other person not really wanted him to be, but because obviously Frank was cutting Bill's hair, so Frank would cut it the way he wanted to. Probably like what I do my husband, I cut his hair the way I think it looks best on him. So you see that part of the relationship and them growing together, right? So, and it was nice to see them age, and so you got to see that, their younger look, and then through the years get to see them 20 years later. I think it's 20 years, if my memory serves me correct.
Mhm.
And then so you see the depth of color and how people change and age, and with makeup and the prosthetics. And so it's just the marbling of everything together creates that older look. And it was so wonderful to be able to do that in a short amount of time and flip back and forth because we don't really shoot in sequential order. So it was fun to like flip flop through the time periods and remember when you're doing what and how you're doing it. So it was really cool to get it all together.
Yeah, and this show, it's kind of a road trip show, and Joel and Ellie are constantly encountering new groups of survivors along the way who are kind of in various states of, civilized society or not, and have, various things at their disposal or not. So, did you have to sort of assess each like group along the way in that regard? What was it like kind of bouncing between each new group of people?
Yeah, it was really interesting because we with the group of people that changed depending on what they had in their surroundings and how they would, whether they had water to wash or whether they had shampoo or whether they, if they were just living out in the woods or whether they had a building, what was their surroundings. And so we just use that and visually what the landscape gave us. So if the texture was really dirty and gritty, then the people were dirty, gritty. And when the texture was a little less dirt and they were more clean, like when we were in Johnson in oh my God, I can't remember the name of the town right now.
Oh, Jackson?
Jackson, thank you. When we were in Jackson, it was a cleaner sort of look, right? Because they did have, the ability to wash and to wash their clothes and do things. And then when we were in other locations, there was the grit. The water wasn't readily available, so the texture became grittier and heavier, and everything around it became just more 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 grit, really, when it comes right down to it.
Yeah. Is it common because, you're encountering so many different groups and then different actors playing them? Is it common for actors to kind of come to you and say, "Oh, I have a really great idea about a look for my character"?
Yeah, they do. They sort of come with their idea, we come with ours, and then we talk about where the character is going and is that feasible for what we need to do. And funny enough, especially on this show, we hit those spots a lot together. So we seem to see the same things. We seem to see the grit. And then I'd go, oh, maybe we should add this. And they'd be like, oh, that would be amazing. And so we would, work that way. And then we'd pass it through. It had to go through Neil and Craig, and we'd go through the video chats and Neil was Craig was always there. Neil was always on FaceTime. So it was fun to play that game and find out if we got it right. And I'm gonna say probably 90% of the time we were spot on because we sort of get into their heads and we know where the characters are going. And then the 10% was just the little fix here and there, something that they specifically saw, like with Merle's character. Neil really wanted her to have like a grayer streak, like just sort of a lightning streak in her hair. And that was something that he just really wanted. And we were all like, sure, that sounds great. Like we're good with that. It was hard for Merle. It was the first time she's ever seen herself with gray hair. So adding that little bit of gray texture and in her wig and stuff was really interesting for her to see that, right? Like it's hard as a woman, especially when she's stunningly beautiful and gorgeous. And then for her to see herself getting aged and being broken down, it's hard at first. Not hard, but it's like, oh wow, that's what it would do, right? Like it's your image of what you see of yourself. So that was really fun and interesting, and how we saw those characters and broke them down. So it's fun.
Yeah, well, I've talked to so many actors who say, the first time they put on a wig or a costume piece or a major prop that they have, that it affects their character in a huge way, that things click into place. From your perspective as the person who's, creating that hairstyle for them, what is it like for you watching them put that on for the first time?
It's really amazing because you start seeing the character that they're wanting to be, and the character that we're creating come together. And it's funny to see them like look in the mirror and do an action, or just kind of like double glance or double take, and then they sort of say, oh, I can see the character. I really feel it now. I really can bring it forward, and I feel like it's gonna carry me through the what I need to carry through, as I like you said, with the prop, or with just something just to piece it together. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, when a lot of people think of hairstyling in TV or film, they immediately jump to like grand period styles, right? But this is not that. We're in the apocalypse. What would you say is the most challenging aspect of designing hair for this type of setting?
Yeah, I think the most challenging aspect of it is the fact that everyone wants everything to be perfect normally in a real world. So it's hard to get people to see things broken down. And so I always try to say, okay, think of people that are out in the wind. What happens to their hair? They've got fuzzies, they've got brokenness, they've got, you haven't washed, it gets piecey, it's not perfect. You have a look that you've established, but you break it down. So pull it apart, but don't make it contrived. Like don't pull out a specific piece. It's got to be fuzzy, it's got to be broken down. And that's hard to get a lot of the dailies and the assistants that are helping to see that until they visually can see it. So I pull up a lot of National Geographic photos, or photos that are out in people working outside and getting dirty and gritty. Photos from the dirty 30s, like you can really see the grit and the fact that they didn't have water to wash, and they still were, all of those photos really show the depth of what you need it to look like and how people are broken down. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think this show you did it very successfully, because I think we've all seen like the Hollywood version of Dirty, where there's sort of one brown streak or
Yeah.
something in the hair, and that constitutes, someone who's survived through the elements or what have you. So I appreciated that about these styles. And this is your fourth Emmy nomination among a slew of nominations for The Last of Us, a very good showing. What does it mean to you to continually receive that type of recognition?
I'm still extremely humbled and surprised. Being from Alberta, and a super small town, never in a million years would I have thought 4 nominations. And I had another one earlier, so it's almost 5, because the first one my name wasn't on it per se, but because that was a long time ago, and we were assistants for someone else. I didn't know that she could bring our names forward, but anyways, doesn't matter. It's still, I just don't. I, it still surprises me every time. I I'm overwhelmed, and I'm so grateful for also my crew, because it's not just myself that's being put forward, it's everyone in Alberta and the people that I work with. So to me, those are it's all of our accomplishments, and it just makes me so proud that we can be that creative from somewhere that people don't think we have the creativity, or they don't assume we have the creativity in Alberta, and we have a lot of talent here. It's amazing. So
Yeah. Well, before I let you go, I talked before about how some people jump to hairstyling means period hairstyling. But this is so impressive in its own right. What is it that keeps you coming back? What excites you about this type of work?
what excites me is the fact that we get to be so creative. I would get to create all these amazing characters. I get to use so many different techniques and learn so many more techniques from other people. On this show, especially, I got to work a lot with the infected. So we got to lay hair in between all the prosthetic pieces, created lace pieces, organized all of that. It's always a growing and learning experience for me and for my team. And the fact that we got to work with the Gowers and Paul Spiteri, and then also and his team, and just really created all these infected hairstyles. Really, in a way, went in and sort of made the hair grow out of the mushrooms and out of the cordyceps and stuff. So that was an amazing part. And next time, hopefully, something else happens. And every time I learn something new, and I love the fact that I pull it from everywhere. Like, and sometimes it's a crafting thing, and sometimes it's from the makeup department, sometimes it's from the prosthetic department, sometimes it's from the props department, even. Like, you see something being built and you're like, oh, I could use that, or I could use that flocking gun on this thing, or I could, all these kind of crazy things that we can use to create texture and density and make your lives easier. So I think that's what I love about it, is the fact that I get to be so creative, and I get to help other people be that creative and use some of their knowledge too, right? So yeah.
Well, it's wonderful work. Congratulations again on your
Thank,
very well-deserved nomination. For those
thank you so much.
watching out there, subscribe to Gold Derby. Stick with us the rest of this season. And Chris, thank you. It was great talking with you.
Thanks.